Okay, going to hear a lot of me in voiceover today because I've got a lot of maps to show you, and then I'm going to set off on a walk where I didn't do much selfie action from Marylebone to Baker Street. But first, let's have a look at some old maps of Marylebone and see why the area ended up where it was and how it was. I would claim that Marylebone is bounded by the Marylebone Road, Portland Place, Oxford Street and the Edgware Road. And I'd say that Marylebone Station is a bit of an outlier and is the wrong side of Marylebone Road to be actually located in Marylebone. And I'd be wrong. Way back in time, Marylebone Village was on the eastern bank of the River Tyburn, and in 1400 a parish church dedicated to St Mary was built there. Eager to distance themselves from the notorious Tyburn Gallows, which was situated at what became Marble Arch, the villagers took inspiration from their new church and began calling the hamlet St Marybourne, the Bourne bit of the name coming from the stream. The stream, the River Tyburn, flowed beside what became Marylebone Lane, which still preserves its curve within today's grid pattern of streets. We can see where the original village was located on the John Rock map dating from the 1750s. And I'll merge in the modern view. As St Marylebone subsequently became an important parish, its boundaries stretched far to the north. Marylebone Park Farm was owned by the royal family, and I've marked its 1799 boundary in red here. This farm became John Nash's Regent's Park, and the modern map clearly shows that Regent's Park stretches to the same extent as the original farm. And this was all called Marylebone in those days. The new road, London's first bypass, was laid out in 1756. In this area, this was eventually renamed Marylebone Road. A bit earlier in 1710, John Hollis, the Duke of Newcastle, had purchased the local manor for £17,500. What a bargain! His daughter and heir, Lady Henrietta Cavendish Hollis, by her marriage to Edward Harley, Earl of Oxford, passed it into the family of the Earl, one of whose titles was Lord Harley of Wigmore. She and the Earl, realising the opportunity for fashionable housing north of Oxford Street, commissioned the surveyor and builder John Prince to draw a master plan that set Cavendish Square as the centre of a rational grid system of streets. The next heiress, Lady Margaret Cavendish Harley, married William, 2nd Duke of Portland, and took Marylebone into the hands of the Bentinck family. Beautiful Georgian terraces and garden squares started appearing, Portman Square, Manchester Square, and indeed Cavendish Square. These were carefully planned communities designed to attract London's growing merchant class and nobility. Laura roads were named after the landowners, names of their aristocratic titles, and also their original family names. This is when the modern border of Marylebone began to appear: Marylebone Road, Edgware Road, Oxford Street and Portland Place. Here is a map from the turn of the 19th century showing the development of the area. But the embryonic Marylebone as a suburb is better shown on this 1807 map. Edgware Road and the new road, Marylebone Road as it later became, define the limit of urban expansion. The first incarnation of Lord's Cricket Ground is on this map. This later moved to St John's Wood, but this is why it is called the Marylebone Cricket Club, the MCC. It's because it was in Marylebone. By the mid-Victorian era, Marylebone had stayed seriously fashionable. This is when Harley Street emerged as the centre of London's medical profession, a reputation it still holds today. In time, development leapfrogged the Marylebone Road, and this new area got called Lisson Grove. When the Great Central Railway built its terminus in the Lisson Grove area, at the turn of the 20th century, the railway company decided to call this station Great Central. But everyone said, "That's ridiculous."
That's ridiculous.
So they chose Lisson Grove as the name for a few moments, but decided this was also the wrong image, and it got called Marylebone. By now, it wasn't actually in what Londoners called Marylebone, but the name stuck. Welcome to Marylebone Station. This opened in 1899 and it's the youngest and the smallest of London's mainline terminus stations. Up here on the platforms, part of the Beatles film A Hard Day's Night was filmed here, with the boys getting chased by girls all over the place. So it was originally the London terminus, Marylebone that is, of the Great Central Railway, and now serves as a terminus of the Chiltern Main Line. And speaking of rock and roll, I think coming into view now should be a bus stop where the Rolling Stones were filmed. I'll try to mix that in at this point. And you can see the sign down to Baker Street Station. Because way at the end of the road as we turn left, you can actually see the very end of the road, you can see Baker Street Station. Past this white van. Get out of the way! The van's not going to get out of the way, I'm going to take it around it. Up here, down the end of the street is Baker Street. It's quite a short distance. It's a very late afternoon in March as we filmed this. And just crossing the road. I say Marylebone, that's what my family pronounces one of London's most mysteriously complicated pronunciations. Other people call it Marylebone and other Marylebone and stuff. But you're going to have to stick with my Marylebone here, because that's what my dad and mum said. So this is Balcombe Street, which stretches north of here and south of the Marylebone Road, which you can see the junction that the buses turn in and the traffic lights. So Balcombe Street was briefly notorious in, was it December 1975, which was the site of the Balcombe Street siege. This was let's cross here. This was a 6-day standoff between the IRA and the police, which took place at number 22B. Now, I wonder where 22B is. I suspect it's beyond the junction here. I should look it up later. And as we join the Marylebone Road and take a left, we're going to look briefly at Marylebone Town Hall. That's the library there, and in Town Hall near this there was the tower. And this was the former town hall of the London Borough of St Marylebone, which was formed in 1900 and disappeared in 1965 when Greater London took over. Here we go again, another view. The Westminster Registry Office was there for a much longer time than 1965. And, well, the town hall was commissioned to replace the old courthouse at the south end of Marylebone Lane. And the courthouse had dated in part as long ago as the 18th century. And after St Marylebone became a metropolitan borough, civil leaders needed, well, they said, we need a new town hall. So they got one in the, as it says here, the Greco-Roman classicist Edwardian style. And the town hall was officially opened in March 1920. As its continuing role as the registry office for Westminster, there were lots of marriages performed here. Ringo Starr, Paul McCartney to Linda Eastman, Ringo Starr to Barbara Bach, Cilla Black and Bobby Willis married there. Liam Gallagher married twice. We're just approaching Dorset House now. Done longest. Look at those petrol prices. They didn't stay like that. This is the gloriously Art Deco Dorset House, and built in 1935. It features released by the sculptor and designer Eric Gill, who was a bit more controversial to say the least. Just like to mention something that's way behind us at this point, which was a pub called the Yorkshire Stingo, which was notable as a starting point for the very first omnibus service in London. And this bus here is the descendant of that service.
But during 1829, George Shillabeer started London's first omnibus service between the Park Duke Stingo and the Bank of England, and his name is commemorated in Shillabeer Place. So just crossing the Baker Street junction on a green light. Wonderpass. I wonder what they do there. Well, I think that's the stairs down into the station, but looking up at the northwest one section of Baker Street, that's the Aviation National Building with the tower. That's where 221B Baker Street would be located. And there's the marvellous pub, The Glow, across the road. And we've arrived at Baker Street Station. It wasn't very long. It wasn't a long old walk, that one.